Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're so glad you could join us today. We've got quite an international lineup for you here on the screen and also in the audience. My name is Linda Pence-Venter. I'm the international specialist at Beyond Nuclear. We are the hosting organization for the event today and also a partner organization for the Nuclear Free Future Awards. And we're happy to let you know that there'll be a special announcement today about the continuation of the Nuclear Free Future Awards after today. The reason we're doing this event, you probably noticed that these are the 2022 winners. And the reason that we are doing a ceremony or a discussion with them now is that there's been a transition of the awards from the Nuclear Free Future Foundation to an independent coalition of activists, myself and others included, and we felt that we should have some sort of event to get to know the 2022 winners, as that was not possible last year. So that's why we're doing that now, but we'll also, as you'll see, be announcing the 2023 winners and awards shortly. The way this is going to work is that I will introduce you in a moment to Klaus Biegert, who is one of the co-founders of the Nuclear Free Future Award. He'll tell you a little bit about the history of the award and also our special announcement today about the 2023 awards. And then each of our winners will be introduced to you by one of the presenters on the screen. And then we'll have a short interview, about 10 minutes, with each of the winners. And after that, we'll take your questions. And so please write those in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And during the course of the program, we'll be looking at those questions and we'll read some of them out, time permitting. So the whole program should last an hour and a half. If it goes a bit longer and you're all still here and everyone can stay, we'll go longer, but we'll aim to wrap up in about an hour and a half. So without further ado, then I'm going to introduce Klaus Biegert, who from Munich, Germany. Klaus is one of the co-founders of the Nuclear Free Future Awards and really the visionary behind the awards and the way they're selected and produced. There's been an event, I think, every year since 1998. And we're very honored also to let you know that Klaus is a relatively new member of the Beyond Nuclear Board of Directors. So all yours, Klaus.
Thank you, Linda. Well, hello, everybody. I like to go back 31 years to Salzburg, Austria in 1992. We had the World Uranium Hearing in Salzburg. The World Uranium Hearing was, in a way, the result of Chernobyl. And a group of activists from around the world got together, worked for 5 years, and the place of Salzburg was chosen by Robert Jung, who was a very early activist. Unfortunately, his name is not in the public anymore, but he was one who published about the story of the nuclear bomb. He was the first. And in Salzburg, we had 1 week of testimonies from the daily impact of nuclear technology. So not the catastrophes, the daily impact, meaning nuclear testing, uranium mining, and the storage of nuclear waste. And what does it do to people and how come we don't hear about it? Because it's no news. The media only are interested in peak events, but not everyday disasters. And the listeners were handpicked from around the world. They were called the Board of Listeners, and they had to report, they had to commit to be reporters of what they have heard. And in the end, a declaration of Salzburg was formulated and 2 years later read in a session to the human rights chapter of the United Nations in Geneva. And yeah, the hearing was also the birthplace of the Nuclear Free Future Award, because we all realized that we are surrounded by unsung heroes, and they all their struggle is also our struggle, and we need to bring them to the public. And the main reason is so we can thank them. And yeah, so 1998, the Nuclear Free Future Award was presented in Salzburg also. There has always been a strong support by the city of Salzburg. And in Munich, the foundation was established by a businessman. His name was Franz Moll. And for 20 years, we were running the award from Munich, but the award itself had a special feature. It traveled. One year we were in Jaipur, India, or in Oslo. We were in St. Petersburg. We were guests of the Navajo Nation. So it was important to us that we also go to people and not have people come to Europe, as it is usually the international concept of conferences. And now the award is not based in Munich anymore. It is now on two shoulders, the Beyond Nuclear in Washington and the Geneva office of IPPNW. But a few people from the past are also part of the new team. Myself, Jutta Wiesenthal, Günther Wippel, and a newcomer is Linda Gunther and Chuck Johnson from IPPNW. And yeah, I think now you got a picture. Where does the Nuclear Free Future Award come from? And before we go to the 2022 winners, I would like to let you know, and this is the very moment right now, it hasn't been announced before, that in 2023, exactly on November the 28th, we will have an award ceremony in New York. We will be embedded in the meeting of states parties for the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. As you might know, 65 states have ratified this treaty, and 4 more are pending. And we will be on Tuesday, November the 28th, we will be across from the United Nations at the Church Center at 777 United Nations Plaza at 5:30. So if you know people who live on the East Coast, let them know. And if you have a chance to come, come. And I like to introduce to you now the laureates of 2023. And one is Tina Cordova. Tina Cordova is a 7th generation native New Mexican. She's a cancer survivor and a co-founder of the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium. And she has campaigned over 18 years to bring attention to the negative health effects suffered by the unknowing, unwilling, uncompensated, innocent victims of the first nuclear blast. The first nuclear blast was Trinity, near Alamogordo in the desert White Sands in New Mexico, on Apache land. And you might have all seen Oppenheimer. When I saw it, I was waiting that in the end, sometimes you read in a movie what is happening today behind the story. And I was waiting to read that the victims, the downwinders of this first atomic test never got compensated. But there was no line. And they were never classified as downwinders, but Tina and her allies are making extraordinary progress to ensure that they are included under the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. There is an act like this, but they're not part of it. The next one is Benedict Kabua Madison. He is a young US-based Marshallese activist who this year became the executive director of the Arkansas-based Marshallese Educational Initiative. He works to educate both US and international audiences about the terrible legacy of the 67 US atomic tests conducted in the Marshall Islands between 1946 and 1958. And of course, the ongoing health, environmental, and cultural consequences of those detonations affecting multiple generations with previously unknown epidemics of birth defects and cancers. Benedict is a strong supporter of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Then I come to Hinamora Morgan Cross. She is a French Polynesian in her mid-30s, whose realization that her own leukemia was a legacy of the French atomic tests in the South Pacific led her into activism. Hinamora works to ensure that the stories and experiences of the victims and their families will not be forgotten, and to pressure the French government into both acknowledgement of responsibility and medical and financial support. She was elected to the Polynesian Assembly of Representatives last May, and just last month shepherded through unanimous assembly vote supporting the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And then we have an honorary Lifetime Achievement Award, but this one is a posthumous award, and it goes to the late Daniel Ellsberg. There is no time today to do justice here in this podcast, in this webinar for Dan. He is perhaps best known for exposing US government decision-making about the Vietnam War when he leaked the Pentagon Papers. However, Daniel Ellsberg was also a nuclear insider, a person who saw firsthand and even participated in planning for nuclear war. He saw firsthand something he exposed in detail in his remarkable and chilling final book, The Doomsday Machine. So these are the people of 2023, and we return to 2022, the winners of this program. And our first will be from Tanzania, and he will be introduced and interviewed by my longtime friend and colleague, Günther Wippel. Günther also worked with me on the World Uranium Hearing. Please, Günther, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Klaus. Well, it's an honor to present Anthony to you. And how did it happen? 15 years ago, friends in Tanzania called a German friend about companies having located uranium in their area in Bahi and Manyoni districts close to Tanzania's capital, Dodoma. They asked whether it was good news or bad news, and we told them it's bad news. Uranium is not a semi-precious stone to be mined by artisanal mining. It is a dangerous radioactive element used to operate nuclear power plants and to build nuclear weapons, with even more dangerous elements, the decay products in tow. Mining it will endanger people's health, their livelihood, and their land, and leave behind a burden which will remain dangerous for many generations to come. A long period of cooperation started. Anthony Lyamunda and the NGO Tesope educated village people in Tanzania about uranium, its uses, and the dangers that come with uranium exploration and mining. They traveled from village to village, explaining the dangers of uranium exploitation to people with not much formal education, a great task which they managed very well, not without personal sacrifices. Things did not go without encountering difficulties. Authorities did not like the educational work based on the principle of civil education civil and human rights, and their implementation. Anthony also spoke out to the public in Germany on several occasions, as well as to members of the German parliament, the Bundestag, in 2009 and again in 2012. Moreover, Anthony and Giuseppe organized conferences in Arusha, Bahi Village, Dodoma, and Dar es Salaam on the issue of uranium mining, with participation of international experts in cooperation with other NGOs. At the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, the Tanzanian representative stated that the companies had not gotten the social license to mine in Bahi and Manyoni areas. By 2007, the price of uranium began to drop sharply from $125 per pound to a mere $40 per pound, and it stayed low for the next 10 years. The company's activities ceased. Nevertheless, Anthony continued educational work with other Tanzanians affected by plans to mine uranium in World Heritage Site Selous Game Reserve, in the area of the headwaters of the Rufiji River, the largest river system in Tanzania. He also participated in international conferences to educate himself and make contacts with others. He repeatedly addressed the Tanzania Atomic Energy Commission, TAEC, in regard to radiation protection issues and uranium mining. As we speak, exploration companies are once again coming to Tanzania from abroad to look for uranium, due to the increase of the price of uranium, which again mainly is due to an alleged renaissance of nuclear power, which is not really happening. Anthony and Giuseppe are continuing the educational work with local people about the clandestine activities of those companies. For his continued resistance to uranium exploitation, Anthony Lyamunda was awarded the Nuclear Free Future Award in the category Resistance in 2022. Anthony, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So could you explain a little bit what the name Giuseppe stands for?
Yeah, CESOPE stands for Civil Education is a solution to poverty and environmental management. We believe that through civil education, we can eradicate poverty. Also, we can manage to maintain environmental management.
Good, great. What is the most important aspect for people in Bahi and Manyoni area? The dangers of radioactivity, the loss of land, or other issues? What would you say?
Here is the boss, because radioactive is dangerous. Whoever that mining will take place, but later the land will be not valuable for farming activity. Mm-hmm. And also, as you know, that Tanzanian, most of the people are farmers. So if there is any company taking some land to the villages, this is meaning that this person that is the land is belonging to him or her is going to lost forever. So they will suffer for the poverty also. So yeah, for us, both of it is more important.
Yeah, I understand. So it has been a long struggle, and there were many difficulties. I mentioned it also for you personally. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, any struggle always going with a problem. I remember I was during the campaign of in Manyoni and Bahi. There's the two companies who are making exploration that time, that it was Uranax from Australia and also Mantra Resource from Australia. During that time, also we know that in Africa, or government in Africa, they're depending tax from this company. So if they see someone is making something wrong, this will be getting trouble. So one day I have been visited with a unknown person, and he told me openly that you stop your campaign, because as long as you're going with your campaign, anything will happen, no blame nobody. And this, from that time, I have been followed by an unknown car, whoever that I go. So this gives me very hard time. I decided to land the country. At the moment, I go to Germany for 3 months. Then I let the things to cool down. Then I come back and still go on with the campaign. But still, the threat, it was around me.
Yeah. So, yeah. that's bad things that happened at that time. Yeah. Now, are you and Giuseppe cooperating with other NGOs in Africa or internationally?
Yes, as you were explaining, we have been conducted international conference since from 2000, 2009, 2013, and 2014. We conduct a lot of international conferences. So we are cooperating from inside the country. We are cooperating with the Tanzania Human Rights Defender, because this is the one who try to help us how to survive because of this threat. But also Human Rights Center, we are cooperating inside the country. But outside the country, we have also NACUM. NACUM, that is the umbrella in Tanzania for uranium. But also we have AUA, African Uranium Alliance. This has been formed 2009 because also it was necessary to work things together. But we have a lot of organizations who are supporting us, who are working with us, like Uranium Network in German, IPPNW. We manage also to work together. In 2013, we have a conference together. So we have a really lot of alliance all over the world.
Yeah, that's good. So actually, at that time, the price of uranium was high and companies went to nearly every country in Africa to find and explore for uranium. Now, Russian state-owned company Rosatom owns via different subsidiaries the Mukuch River project in Selous Game Reserve. I know it's another region of Tanzania, but can you say something about it anyway?
Yes, of course, I can say something about Rosatom. Rosatom, he buys the share from Australian company called Mantra Resource. And during to Tanzania's law, Mantra Resource have been decided to mine open pit mining, open cast mining, and they did the environmental impact assessment according to this method. And also the Tanzania, we have a Tanzania called NEMC. This is the National Council, Environmental Council of Tanzania, who is responsible to guide the environment, whether that you are dealing to have a big project. So he's going to destroy the environment. So you have to make environment impact assessment. So the Mantra Resource managed to do that. And also we participate in that. Later, when they sell the share to Rosatom, they come and they decide to change the mining method through their daughter company, this Uranium One, from open cast to in situ rich. So according to the NEMC, if you change any kind of method, you have to redo a new environmental impact assessment, because the effect is not the same. If you are mining open cast, the effect to the environment will be different. Also, if the in situ rich, this will be very dangerous for the grounding water. But since they come and this Rosatom didn't pay attention or to do this environmental impact assessment. Last year, in 2012, we visited Tanzania Atomic Energy Commission, especially for this reason, to ask them why this company, they are not doing a new environmental impact assessment according to the National Environmental Council of Tanzania. They say, oh, they are very expert. I think they know they will take care. So there is no necessary to do that. But also they say, we give them 5 years prior mining. This is meaning prior mining, you mine without paying any tax. So this is the situation that we are really facing to the Tanzania authorities.
Wow. Yeah, so Rosatom is very set now to mine that deposit, and they don't have to pay taxes or anything for 5 years. Great. And last question, maybe. Since the beginning of 2023, we hear that uranium companies are coming again to Tanzania to explore for uranium from Australia, actually. What is going on there?
Yes, as you speaking that the uranium price have been coming up, and also this the price of uranium, even the led other company to stop mining uranium because it was not easy to mine and get profit for it. So now the price of uranium is up. Most of the company, also we have a new company from Australia called Aachen, that the one who buy the share from Uranax that have been making exploration in the middle of Tanzania and also in Bahi and Manyon. So now they are here. 2 weeks or 1 month ago, I visited in the field. Of course, I saw what they are going on and what they are doing. So I think in the year coming, we really have a big job to do because most of the company they will come to try mining uranium in Tanzania, because in the center of Tanzania, we don't have a mining now, but I think in a few years, according to this issue of uranium rising up, we'll have another company. So I think Sesope, we have a very big duty to do that. And also we really, really need support from all people who are really ready to support us to fight this issue of uranium.
Okay, so unfortunately, the work is not done yet. So there's still more to come, I hear. Yeah. So we keep in touch on that. So I think I'll pass it over. Thank you, Anthony, and for your patience and the interview. Now I would hand it over to Linda Pence-Gunther, who is the international specialist at Beyond Nuclear and who writes and edits the organization's website, Beyond Nuclear International. Prior to her environmental advocacy work, she was a journalist for 20 years. Linda, it's yours. The floor is yours.
Good. Thank you, Anthony. And we're all in support of your amazing courage in terms of what you have to confront where you are. So how do you talk about every possible aspect of the nuclear power, nuclear weapons nightmare every week for an hour with a wide range of fascinating guests whom you have to first find, research, book, and then adeptly interrogate in the nicest possible way? Libbe HaLevy has pulled this off for more than 12 years. Her weekly podcast is called Nuclear Hotseat, and if you've ever sat in that hot seat, you'll know just how warm it is. Friendly, vibrant, lively, curious. These are all characteristics of the show and of Libbe herself. For this remarkable achievement and dedication to educating a wider public about the perils of the nuclear age, Libbe HaLevy was selected as the winner of the 2022 Nuclear Free Future Award in the category of education. Now in its 13th year, Nuclear Hotseat began after the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. And in a moment, we'll talk to Libbe about why that event in particular woke her up to the nuclear dangers, or maybe we should say reawakened, because Libbe was just a mile from 3 Mile Island when it had its nuclear meltdown in 1979. And she later came to write a book about her life and those experiences called Yes, I Glow in the Dark, 1 mile from 3 Mile Island to Fukushima and Nuclear Hotseat. As you can tell from that book title, Libbe also knows we mustn't take even a grim subject like nuclear too seriously all of the time, or ourselves. So she also has a segment on the show called Numbnuts of the Week. And yes, because she has so much spare time, Libbe has also written a musical about 3 Mile Island, Kazoo, and a play about media manipulation at the dawn of the atomic age, Atomic Bill and the Payment Due. And you can find out more about all of her work and how to support it on her website, nuclearhotseat.com. This year, Libbe received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the International Uranium Film Festival, and she will serve as the festival's ambassador to the USA during its 2024 North American tour. Welcome, Libbe.
Thank you very much, Linda.
So first of all, tell us about your epiphany after Fukushima. Why was it that disaster in particular propelled you into nuclear activism and into the creation of Nuclear Hotseat?
I was so post-traumatic stressed after my experience at 3 Mile Island that I tried to get involved as an activist and I simply could not. It was too overwhelming. When Chernobyl happened, I ignored it because I was already afraid of nuclear. Now everybody else was being afraid of nuclear. I didn't have to go there. But with Fukushima, first of all, many years had passed. Secondly, we had social media. So as it was happening and I was recognizing the dangers, I was watching on wherever it was, YouTube, Facebook, wherever I could find footage. And it was overwhelming to me. And 3 months after Fukushima happened, I was on a retreat in Sequoia National Park, which is one of my favorite places. I was hugging trees. I was apologizing to the universe, whatever. And I got the inspiration there to do a podcast. It was like a voice in my right ear saying, you will do your first podcast this Tuesday. I didn't know how to do a podcast. I didn't know nuclear, but that was the inspiration. I started, and it's been every week since then.
Wow, that's impressive. And yet, as you mentioned, you alluded to this, this wasn't your first brush with nuclear danger. So, you talk about the trauma of that 3 Mile Island experience. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened that day and how that affected you in the immediate aftermath?
I was staying with friends who did not have a television set, so we weren't plugged into the media. The first day we heard about it, but we dismissed it as just media hype. The second day I went, well, I'm a freelance writer. Let's go out and get some information and do it. So I'm walking around not knowing that this is the exact time that the plume was coming out, the thick part of the plume of radiation. And I interviewed people and I ended up writing an article that appeared in LA Weekly. That was one of the places I was writing for. But we really weren't upset until the third day. I was alone in the house. I didn't know anybody. I had no transportation. And an announcement came down the middle of the street in loudspeakers saying, stay indoors, do not touch your doors and windows, do not go outside. And basically it was shelter in place. I had no choice because I had nowhere to go. The phones weren't working. They were overloaded. I was completely isolated. And the terror of not knowing if that thing was going to explode or just simply spew radiation. I grew up in the 1950s. We knew about the Cold War, but everything bad about nuclear was supposed to come from the Russians, not come from ourselves in our own backyard. And suddenly, without knowing anything about this, being in a strange place 1 mile away, the nuclear reactor at 3 Mile Island was going through what it went through. And it completely changed my life. I was terrorized. We managed to evacuate. We evacuated for 10 days before I came back to Los Angeles. But the change had already happened. And yet nobody understood because on the West Coast, it was like, oh, that happened back east. Nothing happened there because the propaganda was already out. And it took me until Nuclear Hotseat to find out the reality of it.
And certainly there was an incredible cover-up, obviously, of 3 Mile Island. Still today, you hear that no one died and it wasn't really that big a deal. But so you said you were in this forest hugging sequoia, in sequoia hugging trees, and one spoke to you in your right ear about Nuclear Hotseat. So, and that you'd never done a podcast and you really weren't fluent in the issue. So tell us about that first episode. What was that like, saying, okay, I'm doing this, I'm really doing this. And do you remember who was on it? Like, how did you put it all together?
The first one I did was actually a conference call. And I posted once on my website saying, because I wasn't sure about this, would anybody be interested in getting on a call so I could explore what this might look like? And 2 people, including one who I'd never had any contact with, came on the call with me. And I just said, I'm thinking about doing this. Does this make any sense? I mean, I don't really know that much and blah, blah, blah. And they both convinced me that this was a good idea, that people wanted to talk about it or at least know about it and to do what I could. And I said, well, I'll do this until I don't feel like doing it or until there's no need for it. And here I am more than 12 years later.
And how's it grown in the past 12 years? Because obviously now you've got a huge audience, right? It's international, and you're, I imagine, unique in having that market, this topic so covered so consistently and comprehensively every week.
It's 124 countries that I know of. There may be others that have gone forwarded. The show grew from me. I've done radio in the past. That's my first degree. I also founded a radio program on the gay community in Boston when I lived there. And I've done a lot of media, but I've never been the one completely in charge, which is what a podcast allows one to do. And it started out with me talking loud. I started out with trying to do it live at 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoons. That didn't work because people didn't show up. I tried opening it up for live questions. I finally had to like corral somebody from my first call into actually being on that and giving him questions to ask just to prime the pump, because they'd say, well, do we have any questions from the audience? And there'd be nothing. So gradually it became recorded. Then I learned about editing to take out the uhs and the ums and the places where we step on each other's tongues. And beyond that, as I kept doing it, people began to trust me, that I wasn't some flake, because there were a lot of people who came out with YouTube programs and podcasts going, oh, presenting, send me money. And they got a lot of money. I never did. But what I was concerned with, because I have a journalistic background, is I wanted to present the truth with wisecracks, but with no embellishment of that truth. I wanted to give people the facts, because with information, we're capable of doing things, of operating, of communicating, of knowing what's going on. Without that form of communication, we're all in individual silos, and we don't have the power of the communal voice. I mean, my musical theater background came into play because I have a theme song, and for Numbnuts, we've got a jingle for that. But one of the lines in the opening lyric is, the activists are linking. And that was my goal, to let people know this person over here, that one over there, here's that issue, here's that issue. And in the process, I was educating myself. And I think part of my advantage in not having been part of a nuclear movement before that, an anti-nuclear movement before that, is that I came in with the naive questions that most of my listeners would have. So I like to say that the show is for people who know nothing about nuclear, who want to know something, and people who already know something, who would like to know a little bit more.
I think that's so important as well, because it is quite an arcane subject. To be able to communicate it in a very accessible sort of lay way, and also with a bit of humor, really helps a lot. And so given the incredible, in fact, array of people who you could bring on the show, I mean, at first you think, well, how can there possibly be enough people, enough subject matters? But as you've proven in the last 12, 13 years, are more than enough. Do you select, when you select your interview subjects each week and the topics, is it based usually on what's happening on some topical hook, or is it, you know, somebody you've come across that you think will just be an interesting story or an interesting interview?
Both. It is completely eclectic. It is completely from my perspective. If there's something hot in the news, I want to have someone on who can speak authoritatively to it, because that clears up confusion, and it also gives us ammunition, because people will take a full episode or they just excerpt out the interview. And I always have at least 30 minutes of interview on each show. They have that material to send to their local people, to their legislators, to whoever is in a position of authority, or the media, and say, here's this information. What are you going to do about it? It backs them up. I also am always on the lookout for books, movies, television programs, because the media is more and more coming to be our ally. There's some amazing films that are out. There's some astonishing books that have been published. And to talk with the people who are the originators of that, not only their struggles to get it done, but the content as well, and what they hope will happen as a result, that opens it up for other people to go, I want to see that movie. I want to buy that book. Let's watch this TV program. And the information spreads. Nuclear Hot Seat's a hub for getting the information out. And it's, first of all, wherever I see to reach out to somebody. And secondly, whoever gets back to me in time. Sometimes it will take me weeks, if not months, if ever, to nail certain people for interviews. But I keep going after it because everybody's voice is important.
Absolutely. And of all the voices, I mean, you've obviously had lots of voices on the show. And I'm sure this is a very difficult question to answer, but is there one interview that sort of stands out for you, or a particular person that you had on that moved you more than usual? I mean, not especially better than anyone else, but is there one that resonated with you, that or surprised you in a way that you didn't expect?
There are three. One of them was Sister Megan Rice, who was the 83-year-old nun who broke into the TVA, the Oak Ridge site. I caught her right after she got out of jail, right after she got out of prison. And I usually use that as my Christmas show. A second one, and you surprised me here. I'm struggling to remember her name. The woman who gave me the interview about radiation, who I'm blanking on the specifics right now. I'll bring it in at another time. But the third one was a surprising one this year. And that came from Robert Jacobs, known as Bo Jacobs, from the Hiroshima Peace Foundation. He wrote a book about we are all nuclear hibakusha. We are all hibakusha. And he did it in such a humane and sensitive way, the book. And then the interview was so profound. Usually I limit the time that I talk to somebody to 30 to 40 minutes because that will give me my interview. We talked for an hour and a half and I made it over 2 episodes because what he was saying was so profound and so deeply moving. And that will be one of my cornerstone pieces as I go forward. That one will be repeated at least once a year.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing that again. And thank you, Libbe, so much. Congratulations again. It was great to have you on today, and note the award that you got. Very well deserved. So I'm going to introduce my colleague now, Sascha Hach, who studied peace research and international politics in Tübingen and Medford, and is co-founder of the German branch of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, also known to all as ICAN. Throughout his career, he has been involved in foreign and security policy and nuclear arms control. He worked as a scientific and policy advisor in the German Bundestag and in different NGOs. And today he teaches at the Bundeswehr University in Munich and is a research associate at the Peace Research Institute in Frankfurt in the Department for International Security. Welcome, Sascha.
For this kind introduction. I myself have the pleasure to introduce the winner of the Nuclear Free Future Award 2022 in the category Solutions, so looking to the future. And that is Malte Göttsche. Malte is a German researcher in physics dealing with new verification possibilities in nuclear arms control. I met Malte the first time in New York during the review conference of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 2015. So the review conference that in the end failed, didn't produce an outcome document, and was some sort of political momentum for the TPNW because it strengthened the support for the negotiations on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And at that time, Malte was doing research at Princeton University in the program on Science and Global Security in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering on measurements methods that can be used to verify the authenticity of nuclear warheads. Previously, he was at the Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker Center for Natural Science and Peace Research at the University of Hamburg, worked on his doctoral thesis. And he was also a visiting scientist at the Monterey Institute of International Studies, so one of the, I would say, main knowledge hubs on nuclear disarmament and nuclear arms control. Today, as the head of a young team of highly competent and committed women and men, he works at Aachen University and develops new promising methodologies along the concept of what he calls nuclear archaeology. And this involves the reconstruction of production histories of fissile materials, since current estimates of inventories are sometimes subject to great uncertainties. And that's what he actually was awarded the Nuclear Free Future Award in 2022. His innovative approach allows for non-nuclear weapon states to participate in multilateral monitoring and verification of nuclear disarmament. And thus, this methodology that he is developing has a transformative potential for nuclear arms control in the future, in the sense that it might allow for inclusion of non-nuclear weapon states. Within his subdiscipline, Malte has become one of the most trusted natural scientists committed to a nuclear weapons-free world. And still, despite all the honors and respect, he preserved a critical mind. According to his working credo, science must be of practical use. So Malte, congratulations to the Nuclear Free Future Award 2022. And I'm very happy that I have the honor to introduce you and that you're with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words, Sasha. And I'm really humbled to be part of this group because it's so diverse. I mean, I'm representing the maybe not old, but at least white man in the group. But I'm really happy that this award really has gone around the world. I think this is really important. So I'm very happy about that.
As what you are inventing or what you're doing research on is very technical and very complicated, could you like briefly explain for us to better understand what's new about your verification methodology that you're working on?
Yeah, so you probably know about the International Atomic Energy Agency, that it's doing safeguards, verifying the Non-Proliferation Treaty. But here's the thing. The IAEA is only verifying non-proliferation in non-nuclear weapon states. There is absolutely no international or multilateral verification in nuclear weapon states about the nuclear weapons, about the arsenals. There are, of course, arms control agreements, or there used to be arms control agreements, and there were bilateral verification regimes between US and Russia, but the international community itself has never had the right to learn what's going on in the nuclear weapon states. And for nuclear disarmament, this has to change, because at some point also the international community at large, including the non-nuclear weapon states, will need to have confidence about what the nuclear weapon states are doing, what they're up to. And this is ultimately the goal of my research, and also the research of quite a number of other people. So we're trying to develop these techniques. They don't exist yet, because some of the challenges are different. How do you measure a warhead? How close can you go to a warhead? And what do you do with this super complex history of fissile material production? The IAEA has been in most non-nuclear weapon states from the start of their nuclear programs. But how do you come into a nuclear weapon states that has decades of complex fissile material production? How can you get confidence in the materials that they have and the warheads that they build? So this is the research I'm doing. This is the nuclear archaeology research, and yes, it's actually quite technical. You can earn your physics PhD on this topic. There are different measurements you can take in shutdown nuclear facilities. You can go to a shutdown reactor and take a sample from it and try to learn something about the past of this reactor, how much plutonium has produced there, and other techniques. So I think this is super exciting as a physicist to contribute to this debate by actually doing something, making something.
Like, it is of high political relevance, I would say. Do you have any like example in mind, or is there, could you make a case, you know, in which concrete context or political conflict or challenge question we are dealing with, problems in nuclear arms control that we couldn't solve so far, that you could apply your methodology on, or you would provide solutions?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, nuclear disarmament, I think, is not exactly around the corner these days. Inherently, it's a political problem and not a technical problem, of course. But this has long-term relevance, first of all. I mean, if you want to design disarmament, if you so will, one important aspect is irreversibility. You want disarmament, or those states that disarm, to have this process be irreversible. But when you take apart a nuclear weapon, the fissile material that you get out, you can use it to build a new nuclear weapon. So somehow we have to capture these fissile materials. So the long-term relevance is bringing irreversibility into the game from a technical point of view. A couple of years ago, there was this lively debate about the prospects of denuclearization in North Korea. I mean, we all know Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, this sort of thing, but they were actually talking. There is not so much talk these days. So nuclear archaeology would be super relevant in the North Korean case, because the first question you would ask North Korea as well, how many weapons have you got? And from actually taking measurements from the reactor that they operate, the Yongbyon reactor, you could deduce how much plutonium they produce, and with some assumptions on how much plutonium you need for a nuclear warhead, you could make an assessment of how many nuclear warheads North Korea possesses. But I think also this debate has moved to the long term, unfortunately. But nevertheless, I find it super important to keep moving and keep doing the research, because it takes years, if not decades, to develop these sort of technologies. So there's work to do.
Nuclear disarmament and to apply your methodology right now to current nuclear disarmament challenges. But looking into the future, I mentioned the task that we need to include new nuclear weapon states and nuclear arms control and nuclear disarmament. And I also said that probably non-nuclear weapon states who concluded the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons also want to take part in this. And you already talked about like the challenge of confidence and the importance of confidence building measures or techniques in disarmament verification. How could your methodology contribute to including non-nuclear weapon states in nuclear arms control? Is there are there some opportunities and potential?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say that it's not, nice to have nuclear weapon states on board. They actually legally have to be on board, because the Non-Proliferation Treaty says it's under Article 6 that nuclear disarmament is to happen under strict and effective international control. So that's not only nuclear weapon states business. There are many researchers around the world, in particular in the US, who develop verification technologies, but most of the work is done in the national labs. It's classified, so we don't know that much. The US develops technologies, and then they say, well, here, we've developed this technology, we can do this now. But the question is, who would trust this technology? So I think fundamentally, the question of trust in technology, trust in verification technology, means that the development of technologies and approaches has to be transparent. Ideally, there is even an international joint development of these technologies. And what I try to do with my research is to make everything transparent. Everything is published. We publish even our computer code for the geeks who really want to dive into these sorts of things. And that's very different from what's happening in most of the other areas where nuclear verification research is happening.
Because one of the main arguments or reasons that China, for instance, stresses not to participate in nuclear arms control is on the one hand the different level, obviously, of arsenals, but on the other hand also it doesn't trust the verification methodologies developed in the bilateral disarmament treaties between Russia and the US. So we need something like impartial in this, like also on the technical level, to integrate or include new nuclear weapon states, but also non-nuclear weapon states. My next question.
I mean, China has a fundamental distrust in the motivations of the United States, right? China thinks that basically any action the United States is taking is to keep China as weak as possible. Right, so they are very skeptical of this concept of transparency, because they would think that the US are just trying to use this to their advantage. So I think, again, here also bringing in other states, other perspectives, cannot solve the problem. I mean, this is not an easy problem to solve, but can somehow enlarge the debate, the discussion, and not just make it a US versus China issue.
Political question and gets a political answer. So I already said that you are not only an expert and physicist, but you have also a very critical mind. My next question is a bit personal and refers maybe to that. As a physicist, like in Europe, a talented physicist, you have plenty of career options, actually. And nuclear physics, at least in Germany, is not a doesn't appear to me a very promising field for a great career, and especially not on disarmament and arms control issues. So what was for you, the driving moment, the motivation that made you decide take care of this topic?
I remember this exactly. This was the third term of my physics studies. So I was, how old was I? 21 maybe. And I studied physics, quantum theory, solid state theory, etc. And at some point I was wondering, why am I doing this? What am I going to do with it? I mean, I am a strong defender of basic research, but this was not really where I saw my personal role. And then I was really happy to see that there was actually a professor in Hamburg who offered a course that was on the Iranian nuclear program back then, and that kind of gave me, an opportunity to apply or learn to apply physics to, actual societal problems. And I started organizing a Model United Nations conference in Geneva. I think that was alongside some NPT PrepCom, and that got me hooked, and I'm still here. So yeah, nuclear physics is not a hot topic. Maybe for good, because we've phased out of nuclear energy in Germany, as many of you will know. But I still find that there is quite some interest among the young people in my research. And that's exactly those physicists who now ask themselves the questions that I asked myself quite some time back by now. And this is really what motivates me: educating young people, getting in touch with young people, debating with them. And so this is actually a lively field.
Of questions, but that's also a good ending, actually, on the optimistic and motivating side. So I would pass on to you, Linda. But as I've said, if need or interest is, I've got something in reserve.
Absolutely, and I think we'll probably circle back to you for that question. We don't actually have any questions in the Q&A yet, so I do encourage those of you who are watching to put your questions in the Q&A. A couple of announcements. One is that as the Nuclear Free Future Awards are now independent, we are fundraising primarily so that we can reward our winners as generously as possible, because the three winners do get a cash award in order to help them continue their work, and we're still fundraising for that. So if you are so inclined to donate to the Nuclear Free Future Award, I did put the information in the chat. I hope that those of you watching can access the chat. If you cannot access the chat, please say so in the Q&A, and I will read the information out loud, but it's mostly URLs. But Beyond Nuclear is the fiscal sponsor in North America for the Nuclear Free Future Awards. So if you want to donate to the Nuclear Free Future Awards here, you can do that through us, but you need to tell us that's what it's for. If it's a check, please write that in the subject line. If you do it online, you can't choose Nuclear Free Future Awards, so you need to tell me at linda@beyondnuclear.org that you made a donation for the awards. If you're in other parts of the world, you have a choice really. If you're in Europe, you can make that donation through IPPNW Germany. That donate link is in the chat, which I hope you can see. And I'm going to just check somebody. Okay, that's a question. Good. So I think that the folks in the audience can see the chat. So you can donate as a bank transfer to IPPNW Germany if you want to put your money in that particular fund. And again, it will go to the Nuclear Free Future Awards, specifically this year for New York, for which we're still fundraising, and then beyond, because we expect to continue doing these awards every year. Before we go to the first question, I did have a follow-up question actually for Libbe, which is that, in your search for information, what do you need from the folks out there? Can other people contribute in some way to giving you story ideas?
Absolutely. I even solicit for that on the show every week. I don't know what's happening on the ground right in front of you if you don't let me know. I check social media, I check the news, I'm on everybody's newsletters. But the bottom line is you see it more clearly and more specifically than I can from a distance. So anybody who is on this call right now, from the other panelists whose work I honor as being so critical to what we're doing, to everybody who is watching this right now, you are my sources. You are the on-the-ground network that helps Nuclear Hotseat get the cutting-edge stories and report them with accuracy. If you have anything you want to make me aware of, the email is info@nuclearhotseat.com. And it might take me a couple of days, but I respond to all of them and let you know. I might get to it immediately. I might not be able to for a while, but all the information goes to help. And the one thing I wanted to add was the name that I glitched on for the interview that was so important was Alison Katz of Independent WHO, talking the truth about Chernobyl and where UNSCEAR and the IAEA and all the other agencies got it wrong. It's most recently Nuclear Hotseat number 623 from May 30th, 2023.
Thanks, Libbe. So we do have a question for Anthony. The first question is from Bertchen Kors, and it says, Rosatom is also exploring for in situ leach uranium mining in Namibia. We are mostly worried. Is it done already in Tanzania? And if so, what is your experience? So Anthony, that's a question for you. And Günther, if you want to chime in as well on this, feel free to follow up after Anthony's answered.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. As I explaining, Mantra, the Rosatom, they are applying this in situ leach in Tanzania. And already they are in the process because, as I say, we visited in a regulator in Tanzania Atomic Energy Commission last year, and they told us they have given them a plyo mining. This is meaning a testing mining for 5 years, for some time. So Rosatom, they are applying the same method as I mentioned, say, from Namibia. Also in Kunjulivi in Tanzania, they are applying the same method of in situ leach. So we are worried also, even us here, we don't know how will be going on with the groundwater, because the water, most of the liver in Selugem Reserve are passing through the area that they are planning to mine, but also the ground in liver. We never know what will be happening. Maybe also Günther can add this more if you have something to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the problem with in situ leaching is that you basically pump down the acid solution into the underground, and then it may easily leak into the water table, into the aquifer, and then you can't keep it from spreading. There's actually regulations which say you can do it only in the situ leaching if there's a containment, a natural containment, a geological containment, so it can't seep into the environment. But there's not much attention paid to that. We know that companies do that even if there's no containment there. And there's examples from different places in the world where acid solution has leaked into the groundwater tables, and then if it's there, you can't get it out anymore. That's the companies advertise this method because it's low costs, low operation costs, and low capital expenses costs, and you have not tailings. It's not very visible. So producing contaminations they are producing, it all keeps underground, so it's out of sight, out of mind. But the companies say it's environmentally friendly, but it's not at all environmentally friendly. It's financially friendly for the companies. And at Göttsche River, it's really hard to get by factual information, as Anthony said. It seems like they have been doing some test mining already years ago. And with the rise of the price of uranium, you may want to continue that. Roughly half of the quantity of uranium that is mined worldwide is now mined by in situ leaching. So it's going forward, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's the predominant favorite here as well in the United States, definitely. We have a question for Malte, and it's actually from Jack and Felice Kern-Joppa, who are Nuclear Free Future Award winners from the previous year, and produce a fantastic paper called Nuclear Resistor, and really do marvelous work keeping in touch with people who often are in prison, people, in fact, of course, like our wonderful nun. So their question is, can your technologies, Malte, be used to better understand the magnitude of depleted uranium contamination from combat in a given geographical area? And could it be used to better understand whether DU penetrators have been fired in, for example, Afghanistan or Libya, as alleged by some?
Yeah, so first of all, this is not my core expertise, because this is really on verification of nuclear weapons. But I mean, I assume the ammunition could still be found. So if you find ammunition, you can. There are measurement tools that you can use for the technical people. Maybe there are none. Gamma spectrometry is a technique. You come in with a detector, maybe this size, and you can measure the radioactivity. And depleted uranium has very long half-lives, or uranium in general. So it's there to stay for a very, very long time, which is concerning, of course. But in terms of measuring it, this would mean that you can measure the depleted uranium, and you can identify the uranium-238 in particular in this. So I think this should be possible. It's not part of any formal agreement to do such type of verification, but of course the state can do it itself. But also NGOs could do this, though. I mean, we're talking about Afghanistan and Libya, so this is of course something very tricky to do. But I believe if you do find ammunition, it's probably fairly straightforward to determine whether this is depleted uranium or not.
Thank you, Malte. And now we have a question from Kathleen Sullivan, who you might know from the Nuclear Truth Project and her Göttsche stories, and is also a partner with us in New York for the forthcoming Nuclear Free Future Awards. So welcome to Kathleen. And she says, thank you to all of you for your profound work. It is so inspiring to hear your stories. My question in general, but specifically for Anthony, how can we support the TPNW, but also criticize the provision, like the devil in the bargain for the NPT, that states parties receive technical assistance knowledge regarding nuclear energy? Tanzania is a signatory. Do you think the support from Tanzania and other states is related to acquiring nuclear power? What is your assessment of your country's support for the TPNW? Thank you once again for your important work and advocacy. And actually, before you answer that, Anthony, I think, Sasha, you should probably address that question as well, because I know that you had an integral role in this dilemma about the inalienable right. So what Kathleen, I think, is referring to here is that the TPNW has the same clause in it as the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which allows for the inalienable right, so-called, to develop so-called peaceful nuclear energy. And this was a sort of an equity issue and a bargaining chip in terms of getting the actual vote and signatories and ratification of the treaty. So Anthony, if you'd like to address specifically Tanzania's role as a signatory, and then Sasha, you could give us a little bit of the background about why that actually came about as part of the treaty.
I think as any country like Tanzania, they have to follow international regulation and international laws. But according to the question, when Kathleen asked about how the role of Tanzania, I think the government, they are looking for money. They never care about what will be happening in future, because for the most important for them for the moment is the tax revenue. And also, I think you also remember in few years, a few months ago, Putin have a meeting with African leaders. One of our leader, the MP, visited also to this meeting, and also Russia promising for Tanzania to have atomic energy here. And also, I think let me come to the issue of the background, how important Tanzania to stop the nuclear power, or is only way to stop the uranium mining, because we know uranium is the commodity to the nuclear power. If we don't have uranium, actually, it's not easy to start a nuclear power. So the most important, even Tanzania, whoever that they contributing, they have a signatory of this issue. But the most important for our civilization or our people here in Tanzania is to make sure they are safe, and also to make sure this plan of uranium or reactor in Tanzania, we don't need it because we have a lot of sources here. We have nuclear, we have this hydropower, we have new renewable energy, we have solar, we have wind, we have a lot of sun that we can also still contribute and get more energy for Tanzania. And also, most of the companies, they're using this issue of, they say nuclear energy is a clean energy. This is not a clean energy. Just look country like Niger, look country like Namibia, look country, all the countries that they have managed to mine uranium mining for a long time, they still have a big problem. Even you, the developing country, even if say America or whatever, Germany, Europe, you don't have a solution how to keep the wastage from nuclear power. Also, even here, you mine uranium, but the tailoring, they can stay forever. So this is not the issue that even Tanzania have to be one of these issue that you are explaining. That's the thing that I can say for the moment.
Go ahead, Sasha.
Yeah, to the question, how come that the inalienable rights to the use of nuclear to the peaceful use of nuclear technology ended up in the TPNW. I think, Linda, you summarized it actually very well. Like one motivation of the TPNW to emerge, to be realized was, of course, the humanitarian concern, and also to realize the goal of a nuclear weapons-free world, and that there was no progress on disarmament. But another strong reason or motivation for many states to participate in the negotiations for the TPNW was also to get rid, or at least to challenge, the nuclear hierarchy enshrined in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So the NPT is a treaty that is very discriminative. We talk about what is called the grand bargain. The nuclear weapon states want non-nuclear weapon states to renounce to nuclear weapons, and to compensate this difference in rights and obligations, then the nuclear weapons states promise disarmament on the one hand, and on the other hand, to promote the peaceful use of nuclear technology to non-nuclear weapon states. And at that time, when the TPNW, the NPT emerged, as you know, nuclear technology was the entry ticket to modernity, and for many was perceived as the entry ticket to modernity and economic development. And now within the TPNW, the non-nuclear weapon states didn't want to give up this symbol of equity, to have access to nuclear technology. They said they want to abolish a discriminative hierarchical system, and so they don't want to strengthen this hierarchy by renouncing to this right that the other states, the nuclear weapon states, also have. So this was one of the main reasons, and it was very difficult. There were only also among civil society only a few organizations, like in maybe the German language context and Japanese civil society organizations, that were actually promoting to include also like some sort of renouncement, or at least not repeat the right to the peaceful use of nuclear technology in the preamble of the TPNW. But that was a minority, and most NGOs participating in the negotiations and also being part of the ICANN network opposed this strategy of non-proliferation.
And actually, Sasha, so we have a few people in the audience. I see Mari Inouye there, who from the Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World in New York, who's one of the people who has sort of explored the idea of trying to remove that clause from the TPNW. And do you think that's even, is that at this point a possibility? I mean, it was obviously essential in getting it ratified and entering the treaty into force. Would it damage the treaty in some way to try to delete it now? Or is that even a possibility? Or is it just more important to make sure that it doesn't actually get used in, that this isn't what actually happens?
It's unlikely that you could correct the treaty for two reasons. On the one hand, it would make the universalization of the treaty more difficult. So more and more states would have a reason not to adhere. And second, in order to change the treaty, you need consensus. And among those states that participate in the TPNW, there are states that have a strong stance on this peaceful use of nuclear energy, like Brazil and different Latin American countries that would not accept that this formula, this paragraph, be deleted in the preamble. However, I think we have to understand this. There's no provision for the promotion of peaceful use of nuclear technology, unlike in the NPT. It just says this treaty does not change that you have the right. So I would say that we don't see with the TPNW a progress in this field, and I think it's unlikely that there will be progress on this issue, but we don't see any provision that worsens the situation. So it just remains the same, and the TPNW is not a peaceful use promoter, in contrast to the NPT, which actually actively promotes the peaceful use also with different agencies in the whole regime that support the proliferation of nuclear technology for civil use.
And most especially, I think, with the International Atomic Energy Agency, we've seen that, curiously, this sort of disconnect between talking about the dangers of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant being caught up in a war, but that's not the problem, it's the war that's a problem, and then at the same time going to the COP and actively promoting the continued use of nuclear power. So that's a disconnect. We might have one more question. I actually do want to ask Libbe a question about the media, because you talked about, Libbe, that you'd been a radio broadcaster and journalist early on, and so this was obviously a skill that you had. In the current environment, how important is something like your podcast? Because, I mean, do you feel at the moment that there's sort of a propaganda war that's being waged that is being lapped up by the mainstream media and repeated pretty much verbatim without much challenge about nuclear power, for example, being a great idea for climate change and so forth? And so how important is independent media and a program like yours to sort of push back and set the record straight? And do we have to make our own media now in order to get our messages out?
Having our own voice is crucial. It's always been important, but now more than ever, because we're up against organizations like World Nuclear Association, which has a branch of it, World Nuclear News, which sends out 20 publication or broadcast ready stories about nuclear around the world every week. And news organizations are so stressed, they are underfunded, they don't have people out there who can do the time and take the deep dive to actually understand the nuclear issue. They just lap up the talking points and regurgitate them out. And that's what people hear, so that's what people believe. It's like they are surgically implanting into people's brains, nukes are green, nukes are the solution to climate change, and all the other lies that they have, when logic would point to the fact that it's dangerous, it's deadly, and all the rest. So we need to be able to say that, not just to each other. We already know that. We need to be able to bridge the gap and get it out into the world. Felice and Jack have an amazing resource that they put out. There are others too. And we need to form an echo chamber with each other, to cite each other, to mention each other, and to make the voice larger. Because without that, there's no chance of our individual truths getting out.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And I guess we're going to wrap up now, but before we do that, Klaus rightly points out that, of course, we have mentioned Daniel Ellsberg as our honorary award winner for 2023, but we did not mention who our honorary award winners were for 2022. So Klaus, why don't you go ahead and say a few words about Irmgard and Cecile, who were our 2022 Lifetime Achievement and Special Recognition Award winners.
Okay. One is Cécile Laconte, a French activist nicknamed the Squirrel, and active also in Germany. She's known for her spectacular rappelling actions, especially against uranium transports across Germany. And her peaceful acts, often high up in the trees, brought public attention to the international dimension of uranium reprocessing and waste. Her work is all the more remarkable because she has been seriously ill for years and is dependent on a wheelchair. Her commitment to a nuclear weapons-free world is exemplary in so many ways. And the other honorary laureate is Irmgard Gietl. She's now 93, and she became an activist when she learned, she's from Bavaria, and she became an activist when she learned that a nuclear reprocessing plant was to be built in her neighborhood near the village of Wackersdorf. The harsh response of the state and federal government to try to force the reprocessing plant on unwilling citizens drove Irmgard to get involved. Being a lifelong knitter, she supplied the protesters with resistance socks so they would not get cold feet in both senses of the words. The Bavarian state government abandoned the construction of the reprocessing plant in 1989. But the law, the Bavarian issued a law which, because we had in the county Landkreis, the position who makes decisions was overrun by the Bavarian state. And this law is still active.
And there's actually a very good feature film in German with English subtitles called Wackersdorf, which tells the story of this particular campaign, and it's really it's a great drama film. So I encourage you to find that if you can. So I think with that we are probably at the end of our time. I wanted to thank all of you who came today to listen. A special thanks to our laureates who've been very patient, having won the award a year ago, to come today to talk to us more about their incredibly inspiring work. And of course, a big thank you to my co-presenters here for being here to interview our laureates, and especially to Klaus, who has for so many years been the passion and the vision behind the Nuclear Free Future Awards. I do hope if you are anywhere within range of New York City, you will come and enjoy our evening. We have music always as part of the festivities. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that today. We did have a wonderful music video from Tanzania, but it just wouldn't play from YouTube, so we couldn't show it to you. But we will have Peter Gordon, saxophonist, performing in New York with us for our Nuclear Free Future Awards, and a choir, a Marshallese choir as well. So I hope you can be there. But if not, we'll see you down the road, and please stay in touch with us to learn more about the future plans for the new Nuclear Free Future Awards. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.